Feel after what we just did?
Like I'm gonna throw up.
What's that one thing you hated most about this block, besides working out with me?
Just 10 reps of anything. Just 10.
Of anything, 10 reps of everything.
Everything.
I trained like a 70's powerlifter for 30 days, and this is what happened. I have a huge affinity for old school type training, what we associate as the guys back in the 60s and 70s doing to get jacked. The early days of strength training, way back when, were about experimentation, about trying new things. So by the time powerlifting came around in the 60s, a lot of the guys there were training using similar methodologies that bodybuilders were using and even Olympic lifters. It was really about saying yes to training, getting in, getting your hands dirty, getting used to a shit ton of work and reaping the benefits. You could always look back afterwards and say, that didn't work so well, let me try something else. But there was no way getting around the experimentation. In a world today marked by hyper specialization, your first day in the gym, I think that's a much needed antidote to the modern training culture. Now, I love this type of training so much, both in principle and how it lends itself to the spirit of training culture, that I made a program after it. I put together 70's Powerlifter in my original Base Strength book, which is still available right now, and it's featured in my BaseStrengthAI app, which I'm also using in order to prep for Worlds. I haven't competed at Worlds since 2019. I took 5th in the 105 kilogram class, and I think I can improve on that performance, but to do that, I need a lot more muscle, a lot more strength, and a lot less body fat, and I've got 9 months to do it. So let's see what the first block of 70's Powerlifter did to me. Multiple barbell exercises for sets of 10 across, increasing volume each week. If that sounds terrible, it's actually worse than it sounds, so buckle up and let's get into it. The layout of this program is a 4-day split. This is very common, a squat, bench, deadlift, overhead day. It's kind of upper, lower, but you're focusing on different movement patterns, so it's like 1.5 frequency, but this gives you a lot of touches throughout the week. Most people can recover from it, and it's pretty simple. And given that you're only doing each lift once per week, you can actually cram in a bunch of work instead of having to delicately position your training stressors across a working week. So I like that, but of course there are multiple ways to skin a cat. Now, when you look back at a lot of the programs from back in the day, you're going to see a lot of different barbell exercises, and they're not hyper-specific weirdo variations that are trying to like surgically attack your weakness. They're generally kind of basically good variations that do a lot. We're painting with a broad brush here, and they don't shy away from high reps. So this program starts with a competition lift and then 2 big compound variations. They're usually barbell movements. Sometimes you'll swap out something like dips for a bench press barbell movement, but for the most part, they're barbell variations, and the progression runs in line with the main lift, and it turns out to be quite a bit of work. Now, the variations are typically broad, but you have the option to implement more specific ones as you get a better handle on what your weaknesses are and what you should focus on. But the general changes you make that add a lot of novelty is changing the grip, changing the range of motion, adding tempo or a pause, or switching to some type of specialty bar if you have one available. And of course, there's other ways you can change it, but there aren't bonus points for going off the rails. There's more than enough options here. So you follow up pressing with upper body accessory. Your biceps, your triceps, your delts, your upper back are gonna get hit. On leg day, you'll do specific stuff for your abdominals, for your hamstrings, for the smaller odds and ends that don't get hit. You might do unilateral work. So it's generally big, heavy barbell movements followed by what we can essentially think of as bodybuilding work. And the progression it follows is a Western periodization progression. Now, the app handles volume recommendations based on your input. In the book, I just had a 3-week variation. There's 4-week variation here. You'll generally start at 2, 3, or 4 sets and work up to 4, 5, or 6 sets. Now, that's a lot of working sets, but you see that there's a little bit of pliability based on how you respond to what type of exercise it is. You might be starting out a lot lower on deadlifts, but your bench press, you might end up doing a lot of work very early on because it can handle it and it tends to respond better. Now, each 3 or 4 week block is dedicated to a specific rep range. So the first block that we're going to cover is the 10s. Then it goes to the 8s, the 5s, the 3s, the 2s, the 1s. Once we get into the lower rep ranges, we're intensifying. So we're starting with high volume and then tapering down so we're fresh as possible for those heaviest attempts. And that's where we get recovery, and that ties into the peak. So there is a little bit of methodology to the madness, but also it is very kind of generalized, and it's up to you to figure out how hard you're going to go, how you're going to select the weights, and how the volume is going to move forward, how aggressively within each block in order to allow you to recover. Or again, you can use the app, which is going to make those decisions for you. Now, the key thing here is the progression. This is what we're looking for, because with sets across, especially with higher reps, you're going to fatigue at different rates, so it's a little harder to predict. You can't just add 5 pounds in like a linear progression type fashion. And in fact, the rate that you're going to adapt to this, it's going to be very fast. Muscular endurance goes through the roof really, really quickly. So you want to be able to capitalize on that, which is a reason that we implemented ranges instead of specific dedicated numbers. And your job is to kind of fill those ranges out. I think of increasing the pyramid. You're either adding to the tip of the pyramid or you're broadening it out, doing more sets at heavier weights. So we look at volume overall, which is just the area under the curve. If you add a set, there's more volume. If any of the sets get heavier, there's more volume. Average intensity, if any of the sets are heavier than the week before, the average intensity is going to go up. And then there's the absolute intensity, which is the heaviest weight you worked up to that day. Those are the three things I track. So if I can see a general upward trend, even on days where you don't have it, where you can't go heavier than before, there's still options. You can do another set at a heavier weight than last time instead of pyramiding up and down in kind of a clean fashion. Adding the set by default adds that training stress. So sometimes you improve because you did get stronger from last week. Sometimes you just turn that dial regardless of what you're feeling. And that's what happens when you add in an extra set each week. It is forcing the stress that is going to cause you to respond. Also, it's really important to know that exercise selection is clutch. You're going to see some of my selections early on. I did experiment a little bit, but in general, you want to make sure you're not blowing your wad. So some exercises that are very, very like cardiovascularly demanding or create a bunch of systemic stress. Squats and deads do that anyways. But if you're leaning into that, you might find you don't have enough gas in the tank for the follow-up exercises. So keeping the effort back appropriately is an art form. Many of you are going to want to go hard when you have it. Then you'll find you have nothing left. As the workouts go on, you find that as capacity goes up, you can handle higher RPEs and repeat performance. So more of the sets are quality instead of having this, oh, I'm so strong. And then the other 80% of the work, you just nosedive and crash to the ground. Aside from systemic fatigue, you want to worry about local fatigue. If you blow out a smaller muscle group on, say, a pressing exercise, just like you don't want to blow out your biceps before you go do pull-ups, if your triceps get pumped because you use a tricep variation on the first exercise, you're going to find you have a much, much harder time handling weight. That doesn't mean you can't progress, doesn't mean you can't grow, but you want to do things in kind of an appropriate order. So I recommend competition movement and then save the most devastating movements that are going to wipe you out the most for the third movement before you go into the isolation stuff.
Look at my left. It's all right.
Well, this thing's not working.
It's working. Just tell me you're sandbagging. That's what it's. My heart rate is at 131.
98.
That tracks. Okay, we're a third of the way through just the compounds. We don't even have the accessory or the isolation. We got 4 sets of deads,
Yeah.
4 sets of RDLs,
Yeah.
4 sets of good mornings,
It's a lot of work.
and then sushi. How do you feel after what we just did?
I feel like I'm gonna throw up.
Because
I feel like I worked hard.
my love had a sweater on. This little thing. She's a very brave woman. I go shirtless and cover myself in cold water because I'm not built for the heat. And it's like the fucking Amazon rainforest outside. In your fatigue state, how do you reflect on this 4-week block that we've done so far? Like, think of you remember the first deadlift workout we did?
Yeah. I think it's definitely prepared me for today because I don't feel like I'm fatigued, but it's not like, it's not crippling.
It almost sucks because it kind of hurts similarly, but as you recover, you know, fuck,
Yeah.
like I can't lay on my back and say I'm done because I can actually do another one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just
Yeah,
kind of prepped you for this last week.
I almost want to be tired so I can tap out, but
Yes.
I can't. Yeah, so capacity is way up.
Yes.
Do you remember what you used for deads the first week?
Yeah, it was like at like 185.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then you did 215 for what, 3 sets of 10 today? Okay.
4 sets of 10.
Well, that your fourth one was
Oh, yeah,
195.
yeah.
Okay,
Sorry,
okay.
sorry.
Okay, we double check numbers in this household. What's that one thing you hated most about this block, besides working out with me?
Just 10 reps of anything. Just 10.
If anything, 10 reps of everything.
Everything. Like,
Tens.
everything was 10, 12. The arm workouts, I don't like the resistance training you're making me do.
You look jacked, please.
Stop.
That's not just lighting. Baby.
Naturally jacked, man.
3 months, naturally. Okay, third of the way through. We'll check back in 3.5 hours when we finish.
All right, let's get to the results. So let's start with the bench day. Start with close grip pin press. I needed it because my triceps have sucked for a long time, so I decided to bite the bullet, and I'll focus on heavier versions to start out with later as I'm in more strength specific blocks. However, this did kind of mess with my second and third exercise. I wouldn't really recommend this. Still got a great stimulus out of it, but when your triceps get a little blown, it's hard to do different exercises. So it's a matter of how strong do you want to be for these variations versus how much you're just trying to stimulate. So as the example before, you're just trying to set a baseline of work, and then 10, increase incrementally. The first workout, 225, 255. Why didn't I stay there? Why didn't I go up? Because you're supposed to stay in the pocket. The RP matters. If you go 9 or 10, especially at sets of 10, you're not going to be able to do anything for the rest of your work. So stay in the RPE range. It's very important. We're trying to figure out how to go heavier, how to do more work without just jump into RP 10 on everything. Because when we can save that for the end, after already accumulating a bunch of volume and practice touches, that's going to give us an extra gear we can shift into. So going into the second day, started at 255, dropped it down for 2 sets at 245. So we already have an increase in average intensity and a whole extra set. So that's a whole 33% more volume. So that's a big stimulus, even though the absolute intensity stayed the same. Kept that for the third week, 255, 4 sets of 10. I hit 12. I was twacked out that day on pre-workout, hit 12, felt good for it, even though I probably should have left it for the accessories. I just wanted to get that off my back. Now, this is where fatigue catches up with you. The fourth workout, I'm like, we're going 275 today, where I earned that weight jump. However, I was still experiencing residual fatigue from this volumizing wave. So 275 only hit for 6. I also hit the pin a lot lower than I did in workouts past. I had an inch or two higher. That also made a difference. But I really think the fatigue was catching up with me, and that's why we have deload weeks. If you're going to go up, 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 sometimes that last week you're going to hit a wall, and that's where you look forward to the deload. And then we reset, lower volume work, and then now I'm a couple weeks into the second block, and I'm already much stronger, feeling better. So this is what we're looking for. Volume continuously goes up. I kept the absolute intensity the same except for the last week, so I got an extra stress there. And then average intensity just dropped a little bit because I was fatigued for that last week, but who cares? Overall, I saw this huge upward trend across everything, and I earned that deload. Going into the overhead day, exact same pattern. Now, again, I'm doing some specific fuckery here. I would do my first set clean every rep. So I was doing axle clean cardio because I'm horrible at axle cleans. And the first weight I would start with was appropriate. So I was fatigued for these later sets, but I didn't care. I'm a good push presser. This is a strong event for me. My clean is holding me back. So I kind of integrated those things. I don't recommend you guys do that. This is very specific to my prep that I need. So I was able to see that first set go up as my conditioning and my technique and my grip got better. And I was also able to hang with heavier weights as my capacity got better throughout the weeks, but it's the exact same pattern. Working up to something, 225 for 10 was a little sticky after that. Then I was able to go 245 for my fourth set, then 255, then 265. So I was able to add weight without just hitting the gas. It was appropriate. It was an appropriate jump given how I was improving. And of course, more sets at these heavier rest stop benchmark. So average intensity is going up quite a bit. Now you see a really nice upward trend across. Linearly, I was able to stick to a top set that I was able to add on to, but that's not something I planned. It just worked out that way. Don't anticipate you can do that. It's not always going to work out linearly like that. Average intensity is climbing up, volume climbing up like crazy. So my press did very well across the board this block, even given the implementation of some stuff that might not have been ideal. But I don't even have regrets. I think it did what it was supposed to do. Remember, as long as you're implementing something different block to block, there is no optimal. You just need to make sure that whatever you committed to, you improved upon. If you improved upon it, you're good to go into the next block. But there's always going to be variables and unknowns. So as long as you see progress, assume you weren't entitled to that progress. So if you get a green check mark, if you get a thumbs up, yes, I improved, you did it right. Take that, preserve it, remember it for next time. Instead of asking 5,000 questions about what you maybe possibly could have squeezed a couple percentage points more gains out of. The faithful execution of a block that allows you to see progress from the beginning and end, plus the transition into another block where you do the same thing, that's how long-term growth happens. It has fucking nothing to do with the theoretical 3% extra growth you should have done from doing this other thing. So pull your head out of the sand. You got to take the bigger view. This is how growth happens. Okay, moving into the fun stuff, the squat. My first squat workout was pathetic. And then you see this big jump. Like starting at 60%, I estimated about 545. My squat was kind of in the shitter with the weight loss. 315 for 4 sets of 10 after not really doing repeating high rep sets for a few months. That sucked, guys. I mean, technically the RP was low, but you know what it's like when you can do more reps, but the burn sets in, you're breathing hard. RP gets tricky with different lifts and across different rep thresholds, especially with repeating sets. And knowing I had other work to do, I have a bad habit of getting nauseous after high volume, high rep squat work. So if I'm in my second, third, fourth exercise and I'm going hard with high reps, usually I get a pounding headache, usually I get nauseous, usually I puke. And what I found from this is that adhering to it, starting small and taking my time, I was able to adapt in a way that allowed me to hang. Going into week 2, jump 30 pounds heavier, and then I'm like, nope, too light, nope, too light, nope, too light. Notice I'm also pulsing. I'm doing that for consistency, because another thing that gets screwed up with different exercises at different rep ranges is your percentages, your estimated training max. It gets screwed up because a squat where you take a few breaths in between, where you turn it into a rest pause set at the end, that's not the same as moving through a set like you would with a bench press or an overhead press or a set of rows. It's also a different stimulus I'm not used to. It's also good for hypertrophic growth. It's more local fatigue in the legs instead of systemic fatigue with your lungs as you catch your breath and try to go again. So I think this was a good move, and I definitely think it paid off. Going to week 3, now I'm up over 405, 425, 435. And then I wanted that number 455 for 10 with a breath in between is kind of the benchmark that, okay, my squat's doing pretty well. I'm usually well over a 600-pound squat when I can do that. And to be able to pulse through it, especially in this fatigue state after accruing all of this fatigue, my legs are doing nice. Even my wife's like, oh my God, your quads have never been this big. And it's really because all the pain and issues I've had in the past, inflammation, that I've finally been able to kick. I haven't been able to squat like this. So I'm really looking forward to see what this does. I have a couple big goals in mind for rep PRs that I want to hit. I'll share those with you at a later date, but we'll see how it goes for now. And then deads. This is the other one that's fun. People see 3 sets of 10 on deads. They're like, go fuck your own face. I'm not doing that. Thankfully, the app was smart enough to start me out with 2 sets, and I needed it, especially in the early weeks, because it took me a while to adapt to this along with the squat workouts. 415 and 435, no biggie. Jump to 455 the next week. Again, average intensity is way higher. Absolute intensity is obviously higher. Total volume is way higher. This is what we're looking for. If you can't do all of them, you can't get to a heavier weight, there's still other options. You can seesaw your way up week to week. Just adding an extra set is part of that. Just having one set be a little heavier than compared to last week. That is all substantive stimulus. We get into weeks 4 and 5, finally we have this big week here where I hit that 495 for 10 again. That's another benchmark for my deads, where I do 495 for 10 again. I'm in like the mid 6s. My dead's on its way, but I got work to do to get to where I was in the past when I was months into this type of training. So far, guys, this is cruising. The fact that I've been able to have my body fat come down, my measurements are just a little bit bigger. I'm only 4 weeks into a 24-week cycle. That bodes very well for when I get into the heavy shit, where I'm no longer worried about capacity. Now I'm trying to take these qualities I've gained, these adaptations, and apply it to moving weight. I'm very excited for how this is gonna go. And then I'm also gonna cover at a later date how I'm going to mesh this with strongman stuff. You can get this program in my book, Base Strength. I also have Superior Deadlift and Peak Strength available. You get it on Amazon, get it on my site. You can try the app out at basestrength.com. Take the questionnaire. You get a day to tinker around and try it out for free. See if you like the interface before you commit to a subscription. And whether you do or don't, follow me along, because this is going to be a fun ride all the way to the finish line at the end. I'll see you guys there. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Till next time, this is Bromley. I'll see you.